Nuclear energy, and this is a big subject to chat about because it deals with some geopolitics, geoeconomics, cultural issues, world governments. It's a massive topic, and of course it attaches to the oil industry and energy production, and also energy use around the world. And so I suppose to speak about nuclear energy, first of all, I suppose we need a framework of reference. And instantly when you say nuclear energy, most people will think of nuclear power stations providing electricity to to your lights and home and industry. Now, before nuclear power stations and before nuclear energy was really commercialized, so we're only going back about 70 years really. So it's really nuclear energy, I suppose, is very recent. Before that, essentially, we used fossil fuels. So we would dig stuff out the ground, coal and or oil, and burn it, and we would derive electricity and other formats of energy that way to put in vehicles, power stations, and we would have energy, electricity that way. Now, fossil fuels are essentially a resource, a finite resource. That means at some point in the future, in theory, the world could run out of hydrocarbon based fuels for electricity and other energy and machine propulsion formats. So long story short, before nuclear energy, we had hydrocarbons that were used mostly for energy production, and it is a finite resource. Once we've dug it out the ground and used it, it's gone. You could argue straight away that we have a lot of hydrocarbons still in the ground. The human race shouldn't worry. We're going to have plenty indefinitely. Straight away though, I would think that many people can argue that that is perhaps a naive view, because as we have said and we know, it's a finite resource. It simply can't be dug out the ground indefinitely. We will run out of it. And one of the interesting things there is, I remember chatting to someone a few years ago now about wellhead pressures, and it sounds sort of interesting, but on all oil fields, oil and gas fields, they measure the wellhead pressures. Now, because the wellhead pressure indicates how much oil is left inside that oil and gas field. And what they're looking for is the peak oil pressure. And then from that, they're able to understand what the well might look like if it is around half. So if you had all the oil pressures of all the oil and gas fields around the world, in theory, you would know how much oil and gas there is in those fields at that point in time, assuming that you'd identified where all the oil and gas fields are. And you are quite right. We haven't yet tapped all the available oil and gas fields that exist on planet Earth. That is correct. But what we do know is we have certainly found a lot. And it's the continued research in finding oil and gas fields around the world and the extra lengths that we go to find them that would indicate that in terms of it's a natural resource, so far we seem to be using a lot, that would be understood. Now, Also, I haven't even mentioned climate change and gases and extra carbon in the atmosphere and the problems that can solve. We know that that's an issue. But anyway, the point I'm really making is that hydrocarbons is a finite resource, and at some point in the future we could run out of them, and that's a massive issue for human beings. So technology brought us to a place where our technicians and scientists were able to look at a new format of electricity creation, a new form of energy creation. Now, of course, this technology was spearheaded, unfortunately, by the weapons industry, and splitting the atom and creating the atomic bomb and the hydrogen bomb, and so the military industry pioneered a lot of the science around nuclear fuel and nuclear energy. But in actual fact, the military, a lot of their technology efforts, even though they have a military application, most of the time they do lend themselves to having a transfer into the commercial sector. It's amazing how much of military science ends up in commercial use. I mean, it's quite cool, actually. But anyway, the bit that we're really bothered about today is hydrocarbons is finance. Hydrocarbons is finite, and nuclear energy is a technology-enabled advancement of energy production. Now, of course, at that point, I could mention renewables and green energy. And I'm a person that really believes in windmills and hydro stations, and utilizing natural forces of the earth to create generators and create electricity that way. So yeah, I'm a big fan of green energy and renewable energy, using tidal waves. So basically using the sun, wind and sea to create energy. I think that's marvelous, and I think we should be heading in that direction also. And also renewable green energy does play an important part in our energy production mix, if you like, because today your country will most probably have an energy supply mix of hydrocarbons, nuclear and renewable. So literally, I'm in the UK right now, and we have old coal power stations, nuclear power stations, hydroelectricity, solar electricity and wind electricity all being fed into the grid. And to varying degrees we have access, or we are provided electricity with those formats of energy production. One of the things there is that green energy, in particular hydroelectricity, is it's very good at switching on when you need it and then switching off. Solar and wind is unfortunately, you can't always switch it on like hydro, because sun and wind is something that's there or it is not. What you can do is stick a great big a great big battery to store that energy, and that is something that is ongoing right now, but it's very costly, and unfortunately it's very intensive on the raw materials. What you can do though very easily is switch on a hydrocarbon based power station, so coal and diesel and all the other hydrocarbons. You can just switch that on, switch that off. So, unfortunately, hydrocarbon energy creation is very usable. It's very good in its in that you can switch it on and off, when you need it. Nuclear you can switch off, but it's very complex. Well, it's very labor intensive, and you perhaps wouldn't want to. But at the same time, switching nuclear energy on is fabulous, because once it's up and running, a nuclear power station is going to run for about 25 years and then 50 years with a much smaller amount of fuel maintenance. Now, actually, people will argue with me there that, there is still a lot of very high-tech, high-level maintenance going on. That is true. But in terms of getting energy as an output, there is some interesting view of nuclear energy power stations in terms of the labour-intensive ongoing management of them. And I suppose really we should talk about all the pros and cons of these different energy formats. But today I'm really wanting to stay at top level and to chat about nuclear energy as a thing that we have in the world today, that we have in society. And I believe it is a real operator in energy production today. Now, I know that actually someone's going to say, hold on, Stephen, what about fusion? What about that very new and latest technology format that we have today? And absolutely, there are power stations being built, fusion power stations being built right now. And I understand there's more than one actually being built in Europe. Now, I imagine that if it has been commissioned, if it is being built, it means that they, in science and in industry today, what they have been able to do is get more energy out to energy going in. When I first heard about this a little while ago, I thought I could imagine a nuclear power station driving a fusion power station, the net result being more energy out, believe it or not. And it was just something I thought about. It would seem crazy that they would do that, but the economics, the cost effectiveness, I am sure a lot of that will be looked at. And at the end of the day, if you were to look at a country as a whole, the energy out that goes to your end users, your consumers, does need to be much bigger than energy going in, because whatever energy format you are using, whether it is fossil fuels, nuclear, renewable, or high-tech fusion, whichever energy system you are using, you have to put a lot of energy in anyway to get that energy out. So at the end of the day, you are looking at costs, but also labour costs, environmental costs, and the costs to implementation. Because each of these things is actually very high technology. It's very capital and labour intensive, and these are big high-tech, big civil engineering projects. So you really have to do it very corporately and have the best technology that you have in the world today, all helping you design a policy first, then a strategy, and then roll this out across your country. And the lead times obviously are going to be enormous. Anyway, you can see how big this conversation can be. But once again, I want to go back to nuclear energy. Nuclear energy is something that we have today, and most people walking down the street won't be aware that in Europe, at one point in Europe, about half of the energy being consumed anyway was nuclear provided. And I think that would surprise an awful lot of people. And I do remember having a conversation with someone, and they explained to me that Germany right now has at least half of its energy delivered by renewables. And in fact, I think it was even more than that. And I thought, I'd love to see, the government release figures on this to understand that is the case, because I found that, unbelievable. because it would indicate that there's an awful lot of windmills, solar powers, hydro farms in Germany, all doing their job very well, all going into the grid and to the end user. And it is going to be interesting if you look at any country's energy supply, because I know that in places that you don't expect, you're going to find out that there's a dirty, great big coal power station delivering the lion's share of power to that city or those cities. And that isn't because someone spooky is trying to scare people and blow up the atmosphere. It's because the coal power station was built 25 years ago. It cost an awful lot of money, and there's still 20 years left of it doing its job. And somebody will have already thought about the carbon footprint of that thing and the supply of coal to the thing. And I imagine it's been upgraded, and I know that some coal power stations have carbon cleaners built into the waste. And they can prove that they are cleaner, but they're still going to there's still another 20 years left of them burning coal to create the energy. So it's a subject that's dealing with government policy, massive fundamental investments, massive large scale, in fact so large it's your entire country that benefits and uses these things. And there are costs. Number one, climate change, and number one, the gases released because of that power station, and the impacts, all the varied impacts that is a result of that. And so without thinking about it, you can quickly take the view, hold on a second, there is a great big dirty coal power station. It's destroying the atmosphere and killing birds and trees and my lungs. And so therefore we just should not have it. Well, that's a view that's absolutely valid. But the thing is, if you literally just switched off that power station right now, your kettle might not work later that day, and your electric oven and electric heating wouldn't work in your home. And you could pick up the phone and say to your supplier, hey, where's my electricity? And the supplier would say, well, you and your friends shut us down. We're no longer running. That's why you have no power. So of course, we can't just switch off coal power stations. These things have to the discussion, the scientific understanding, the policy formation has to happen years before we see change. Now, of course, today, every person in every country is aware of climate change. These issues are being discussed over and over again. And because it always relates to cost and geopolitics, geoeconomics, these decisions, we can never see the fruit of them happening very quickly. It's just not possible. And, there are many times I've chatted with persons about nuclear energy, and I've said, I'm a big supporter of nuclear energy, and they've quickly said, what a terrible person you are. Nuclear energy is very dangerous, and we can't have that in this world. And I've thought, well, already today, your house and electric car and a lot of your life is because of nuclear power stations anyway, and they've been chugging away for the last 25 years delivering your hot cups of tea. So nuclear energy is a thing that's already here. It already works incredibly well, and it's something that isn't as devastating on the atmosphere as hydrocarbons are. And yes, of course, creating a nuclear power station does have a carbon footprint. The resources that are used to build that power station are huge, and there is a footprint there. Yes, but if you look at the lifetime of a hydrocarbon-based power station and a nuclear power station, the nuclear power station's footprint is massively smaller, and they produce more power than coal as well. So I feel that what I want to say is, actually, maybe I'm preaching to a lot of converted people also, and they are, they're quite happy with nuclear energy anyway. Because the nuclear waste, we have solutions for that, and I really believe that technology will actually find a way to repurpose those spent fuel rods, and we will be able to actually extract a meaningful value from those things anyway. Nuclear power stations are going to get more efficient, more capable, I'm sure of that. And in theory, you could have a nuclear and renewable mix today quite easily. So the nuclear power stations that you have in your location, they could be all switched on, delivering at least half of the load that they know is definitely going to be needed by its population, by its customers. And the energy provided to your home, to your industry, to your city can be regulated by switching on and switching off the hydrocarbon renewable power stations, and the energy supply could be regulated that way. Of course, wind and solar, they can be switched on when nature provides the solar energy and the wind, and they can be mixed with the nuclear power station regardless. Only using the hydro generation when it's needed to help regulate that way. But if you look at providing energy to a city or parts of the country, it does have to be created somewhere and regulated. And in actual fact, in Europe, for example, it is incredibly clever how they actually do that already. And they simply have power stations delivering the backbone of the energy requirement, and it's regulated by switching on and off hydro in particular, but also some other hydrocarbon-based power stations that can easily be switched on and off, that helps regulate the supply. It is very interesting, and once again, chatting about a subject like this it's difficult, because you have to create your framework of reference and tackle it that way. But I feel what I'm wanting to say, what this video is saying again, is that nuclear energy is something that is already delivering the lion's share of electricity to your home. It's already there and installed and working very well, and has a massively smaller footprint than hydrocarbon power stations. And if economics prevail, and I understand that they do, moving completely away from hydrocarbons to nuclear is a feasible option, and I know that some people take that view anyway. But even if you just have nuclear, you still need other energy providers, another in the system, another energy source that you can use to regulate the energy supply to the end user. Because when you switch these power stations on, you can't just switch them off very easily. Even the big power stations, takes a while to switch them on, and you need to go through a process to switch them off again. So actually delivering electricity to everyone's kitchen is an unbelievable achievement. Actually, it's absolutely unbelievable to think that you walk into your kitchen, flick on the kettle, and there's hot water. What is behind that is exceptional, really. It's one of the amazing things about human beings, once again, what we have done in this world, with technology, to aid the quality and value of our lives is really quite something. Anyway, I'm aware that this video, you know, I've touched on a few things here. The main point of it was to talk about my opinions about nuclear energy. Once again, it's my opinion. I'm a big fan of nuclear power. I'm also a big fan of high technology fusion power, but it's still in its very early days there. And it's not as understood and developed as nuclear. And for me, nuclear power is a very good resource and technology that we have today. And you know, the fact is it's already delivering power to your home anyway, and it has a much smaller carbon footprint than other formats. Well, in particular, fossil fuels. Green energy and energy, that's another video all by itself. In fact, energy itself is a very interesting, it's a great subject, and it's a massive part of our lives. And in this video, I haven't mentioned our relationship to fuel in terms of transportation, which is massively interesting because it brings into focus electric vehicles and geopolitics and the stability of geopolitics. So that's unbelievably interesting. Anyway, I'm going to say ciao in this video. I'm really offering an opinion about nuclear energy. There are a lot of wins for it. It's a great technology. It's already there and it's doing a great job. And you know, again, this world is an interesting place. And yeah. Anyway, I hope everybody is well and speak again soon.